Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here for thedailysheeple.com, and this is your news shot. I'm going to go to the freethoughtproject.com. They say an eye-opening survey shows the number one fear of U.S. citizens is government, not terrorism. Imagine that. It ain't the terrorist. By God, the terrorists aren't going to get us. It's the government. An extensive survey of hundreds of adults across the United States has revealed that the thing that most Americans fear more than anything else, believe it or not, is their own government. In fact, according to the survey, no other fear even comes close to the percentage of Americans who worry about their corrupt government officials. The survey was conducted by Chapman University, and it serves to back up the point that while Americans claim to live in the land of the free and democracy, deep down, they realize they're living in a corrupt oligarchy. I mean, let's face it. Who's really the terrorist? Are the terrorists the terrorists? Or are the government the terrorist? I mean, really, who terrorizes you more on a daily basis? Would it be some jihadist over in the Middle East? Or is it perhaps our government? You know, Jeff Sessions. We'll just leave it at that. Now, this is an excerpt from the survey. It says the Chapman University Survey of American Fears, Wave 4, provides an in-depth examination into the fears of average Americans. In May of 2017, a random sample of 1,207 adults from across the United States were asked their level of fear about 80 different fears across a huge variety of topics, ranging from crime, government, the environment, disasters, personal anxieties, technology, and many others. Now, as Niall McCarthy notes, like last year, corruption of government officials came top in 2017 with a staggering 74.5% of U.S. adults saying that it makes them afraid or very afraid. Despite the constant fear-mongering from the mainstream media and government on boogeyman terrorists plotting to steal our freedoms, the public, according to the survey, is not buying it. In fact, the threat of terrorism isn't even on the top 20. Terrorism comes in at 22. Guess what it's below? Credit card fraud and identity theft. Now, while this survey is certainly promising in the idea that people are waking up to government corruption, it's also a telling sign that America's ability to hold two entirely contradictory ideas is self-evident. This ability, or perhaps better defined as disability, to hold two opposing ideas, such as the spreading of freedom through war, as being logically sound, is, of course, cognitive dissonance. When one is in a state of dissonance, they may sometimes feel disequilibrium, frustration, hunger, dread, guilt, anger, embarrassment, and anxiety. In order for a cognitive dissonance to work, society must remain just ignorant enough to support and to believe the lies fed to them from the establishment as reality, even though this reality is a complete contradiction. Give you an example. You know, he brought that up. I'm going to say the Department of Defense. Edward Bernays was pivotal in renaming that because America was weary of war after World War II. And so they didn't want to call it the Department of War anymore because, why? That's too overt. Why, that tells the truth too much. Why, let's sugarcoat it. Let's call it the Department of Defense. That way, we're defending freedom and democracy through war. Yeah. Now, it goes on to say, once we step back and observe with this in mind, the reason for this contradictory mental state becomes quite obvious. It's much easier to remain delusional in a state of suspended disbelief than it is to deal with the opposing ideas held inside one's head. How can one chant USA is number one while at the same time fearing the rulers of that USA? How do you do it? Now, coming to terms with that fact that you can actually be killed by the very entity who claims to protect you from those who wish to do you harm is a difficult realization. Fortunately, there are those of us who have woken up to our contradictory existence. This is not to say that we're smarter than others, only that we can recognize our own ignorance, and through this self-reflection, seek to lessen that ignorance through entertaining ideas that make us uncomfortable. If this survey shows anything, it's Americans will do well to entertain the uncomfortable idea that this country they held so high up on a pedestal has actually long been on a path to become the dystopian nightmare written about in books like 1984. Americans would do well, he says in conclusion, to remember the words of John Basil Barnhill in 1914 when he said this, quote, "When the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty." I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's News Shot. Feel free to comment below and visit our website at thedailysheeple.com. Have a great day, everybody.